For more, let's bring in MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid, who joins us live from Dubai. Inzamam, good to see you again. What's the latest there? It shows the U.S. commitment, I'd say, to keeping a ceasefire intact, that there continues, well, to be fire. It is not ceasing, but yet we refuse to say hostilities are resumed. Is there any sense of optimism on these talks, which 72 hours ago, U.S. officials were saying, hey, we're on the doorstep. This is about to get done. They've tapped the brakes since.
Yeah, there was real optimism at the weekend, wasn't there, Jonathan, when, of course, President Trump, but also the Iranians, even some of the Gulf countries were suggesting that we were pretty close to getting a deal done. I think now there is a real sense of frustration, and that's frustration because we've been here many times before where it seems that the negotiations are going pretty well to get this framework over the line. And remember, this is just the initial framework before the negotiations actually take place, before the two sides get in the room together and have discussions once again. And then when we get close to that framework being signed off, there seems to be some form of attack, whether it is from the US or whether it's from Iran. And now over what we've seen over the last 24 hours with these attacks from the United States, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz and towards some sites on the coastline of Iran, I think there's a real sense of frustration once again, so much so the Iranian Foreign Ministry has come out today and said that the terrorist US army had committed a blatant violation of the ceasefire. In a statement, they said that these aggressive acts coinciding with ongoing Pakistan-mediated diplomacy once again exposed America's bad faith and malice towards the Iranian nation, the region and the world. The Islamic Republic of Iran will not leave any aggression unanswered and will not hesitate in defending Iran's sovereignty. What I find hugely interesting about this statement is that it's come directly from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. This hasn't come via the IRGC. It's not come from the Iranian military, who is in charge of who they attack and when they attack. They've been in control of launching missiles and drones over the last 3 months of this conflict. This has come from the guys who are essentially leading the negotiations. And I think that gives you a sense of how frustrated Iran is by this latest attack, because probably we were very, very close to getting a framework signed off and over the line, which would then allow for the negotiations and the nitty-gritty conversations around Iran's nuclear program, around the Strait of Hormuz, around releasing assets, and those conversations to be had. However, now because of these attacks, I think there's a big question mark on where we sit currently. They call it a blatant violation of the ceasefire. And I think that the question is how much will it impact these negotiations? Jonathan, we've got to remember as well, we're now heading into a 4th month of this conflict. And yes, whilst the fighting may have reduced significantly from in the early days, albeit not in Lebanon, where it very much continues, even more people killed overnight as a result of Israeli strikes in Lebanon, there is still no clear sign of a way out of this conflict. And I think that remains a huge concern for many in this region.
And Inzamam, the president seemingly desperate for a win he can sell. I think that was behind this push this weekend about trying to expand the Abraham Accord, saying it was mandatory for all the nations there to join. That news broke while you and I were speaking live yesterday, and there's a lot of pushback, skepticism that would ever happen. But if not that, and if Iran has more control over the strait, and if its uranium isn't really addressed, I mean, what other win could Trump claim here? Or is anyone else in the region suggesting there's a way to save face in these negotiations?
Look, the Abraham Accords was Trump's baby when he implemented that. And look, it's done well for the UAE. Their ties with Israel are incredibly strong. But when he mentioned it on the call to the other Gulf leaders and some other countries like the leader of Pakistan and other countries as well, there was deafening silence, because it's impossible to see the likes of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, all who do not have diplomatic ties directly with Israel, actually joining a pact where they see eye to eye with Israel, where they trade with Israel. That's just something which isn't going to happen. Look, President Trump's going to try and get as many wins out of this conflict as he possibly can. Right now, though, it doesn't look as if he's getting many, because the Strait of Hormuz wasn't an issue before this war actually began. It's only been an issue as a result of Iran's strategy throughout this conflict. The enriched uranium discussion looks like it won't be had later down the road until we get a complete end to fighting. That's what Iran are demanding. And so whether actually something comes of the enriched uranium discussions and the nuclear discussions, then there aren't really many wins for the president as a result of this conflict. And I think the big question that the American people, but also the people here in the region, particularly across the Gulf countries, will be asking, why did we need this war in the first place?
MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid, live from Dubai. Thank you as always. So, David Rohde, we're at a moment where a few days ago it looked like this war could be coming to an end. That seems less certain now, but certainly the U.S. has some hopes for negotiations. As that approaches, remind us, please, about the goals that this administration first set out for this conflict and what has actually been achieved.
Look, I want to give credit to all the service members that are out there, and particularly the day after Memorial Day. But this has been a disaster for this administration. To have the Secretary of State, as we just saw him on his plane, trying to play down, almost trying to placate the Iranians and the American public about how this conflict has gone was extraordinary. No matter how you look at it, none of these goals, or maybe one of them, has been met. I looked it up last night. I looked up President Trump's speech on February 28th when he announced the war. So achieved, annihilate their Navy. Maybe. I mean, I think that's generally true. But this morning, the New York Times has reporting that there's hundreds of these speedboats. And look, I believe the United States Navy. I don't believe the Iranians at all. If they're laying mines with one of these speedboats, that's why I was part of the attack yesterday. That's extraordinary. That shows how emboldened the Iranians are. So that's maybe achieved or partly achieved. And then everything else, destroy their missiles. The latest assessment is that 70% of Iran's missile capacity remains intact. They have knocked out some of the factories, but again, that is not an achievement overall. Ensure the region's terrorist proxies no longer destabilize the region. That's not happening at all. That's not even part of these negotiations. And the missiles aren't either. Ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. As Inzamam said, that's not even part of the current negotiations. That will come in this 60-day second round of talks. And then most tragically, what he said he said here, to the great people of Iran, take over your government. And the regime remains in place. So it's astonishing to me that an American president is in this position. And they just, this administration, I just continues to mismanage this war.
So, David, all weekend the reporting we heard was that Donald Trump really wanted to make a deal, that gas prices were high, Republicans were worried about the midterms. And then last night we saw the U.S. conducted self-defense strikes in southern Iran. So can you make this make sense to us?
Yes. So these destroyers that were there, they have these amazing radars. And again, our military is extraordinary. I think these missile sites sort of locked on the destroyers. They can sense it when a radar is trying to locate them to launch a missile, a guided missile that will then hit them. So they fired first. And again, I believe the U.S. Navy, if you see an Iranian speedboat laying mines, you attack it. So it's the Iranians that are being the aggressors here. And look, the United States has allies. We did a story over the weekend about the British wanting to help with minesweepers. The United States needs to retake the force. Let's retake the Strait by force, or I guess capitulate in these negotiations, because this is just a stalemate.